The underground auction wasn't on any map. You needed blood on your hands and billions in your pocket just to be considered for entry. Beneath the glittering towers of New York City, hidden in a vault of vice and velvet, masked elites gathered to buy anything that could be priced: ancient weapons, cursed jewelry, caged beasts, and tonight, a rare human. Damien Volkov sat in his private box, clad in a tailored black suit that cost more than most of the room's lives. The air around him was heavy with power and disinterest. The MafiaKing, a public angel with a criminal empire deep beneath his feet. He looked down at the stage with empty eyes, unimpressed by each offering: a demon's blade, a diamond that pulsed faintly with light, a half-tame panther with human eyes. Then the boy stepped out, barefoot, cuffed at the wrists and ankles in gleaming silver. A soft silver collar looped around his throat, connected to a chain held by a gloved handler. Luca, he moved like a frightened fawn, eyes wide and wet, shimmering under the spotlights. His hair, silver white and tousled, fell over pale lashes, lips slightly parted, skin glowing like candle-lit porcelain. There was something otherworldly about him, too pure for this room of wolves. The crowd fell silent, unclaimed, untouched, unspoiled. The auctioneer announced with a grin, "His name is Luca, age 20, no branding, no enhancements, a rare gem, as soft as he looks." A pause. Starting bid, 100,000, 1 million, Damien said flatly from above, his voice slicing through the silence. Heads turned. Someone behind him tried to laugh. 10 million. Damien stood, not bothering to look at the man. 50 million. Dead silence. The room knew better. The auctioneer swallowed, eyes darting. Sold to Mr. Volkov. Damien descended the stairs like a storm in a silk suit. He stopped at the stage, eyes locking with Luca's. The boy didn't blink. His lips trembled slightly. Damien stared for a long, still moment. The boy was shaking, terrified, but something inside him curled tight and possessive. Beautiful, fragile, his. He handed the auctioneer a black card. Voice low, final. Mind. Damien Volkov stared at Luca, his gaze intense and unwavering. The boy trembled under the weight of it, but Damien didn't look away. Instead, he reached out and trailed a finger along Luca's jawline, tilting his chin up. "You're mine now," Damien murmured, his voice low and commanding. "Every inch of you belongs to me." He snapped his fingers, and two burly men approached, unlocking Luca's cuffs. Damien watched as the boy rubbed his wrists, wincing slightly. He felt a pang of something unfamiliar in his chest. Was it concern? Damien dismissed the handlers with a wave of his hand. "Leave us." Damien stepped closer, his tall frame casting a shadow over Luca. He reached out and gently brushed a strand of silver-white hair from the boy's face, tucking it behind his ear. Luca flinched at the touch, but Damien didn't pull away. "You're cold," Damien observed, noticing the goosebumps on Luca's skin. Without asking, he removed his jacket and draped it over the boy's shoulders. The fabric dwarfed Luca's small frame, enveloping him in Damien's scent. Damien's eyes softened slightly as he watched Luca bury his face in the jacket. "I'll take care of you now," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "You don't have to be afraid." He wrapped an arm around Luca's waist, pulling him close, The boy tensed, but Damien ignored it. He was used to people being wary of him. It was a small price to pay for the power he wielded. As they walked out of the auction house and into the waiting limousine, Damien kept his arm firmly around Luca. He could feel the boy's heartbeat racing against his chest. "You're safe now," Damien murmured against Luca's ear. "So tell me," Damien said softly, tilting Luca's chin up with a finger. His thumb brushed over the boy's bottom lip, tracing its shape. "What's your name? And don't lie to me." His gaze was intense, searching. In the dim light of the limousine, his eyes seemed to glow like polished marble. There was a quiet menace in his voice, a subtle threat underlying the gentle touch. Damien Volkov had bought Luca fair and square, every penny accounted for, but he wasn't the type of man who tolerated deception, not even from a pretty plaything. He waited, his patience unbreaking, as the city lights flicked past outside the window. "You can speak freely," Damien murmured. "I promise I won't bite, unless you ask nicely." His lips curled into a small smirk, revealing a hint of white teeth. Luca hesitated, his eyes darting nervously between Damien's face and the passing city lights outside the window. He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing visibly. "My name is Luca," he whispered finally, his voice barely audible over the hum of the limousine's engine. "Luca Rossi." Damien's smirk widened into a satisfied smile. "Luca Rossi," he repeated, savoring the name on his tongue. A beautiful name for a beautiful boy. His hand slid from Luca's chin to cup his cheek, thumb brushing gently over the delicate bone structure. Damien leaned in closer, his breath warm against Luca's ear as he spoke. "And now that I know your name, I think it's only fair that you learn mine. I am Damien Volkov." He pulled back slightly to look into Luca's eyes, gauging his reaction. The name Volkov carried weight in certain circles. It was synonymous with power, wealth, and influence. "But you can call me Damien," he added softly, his thumb tracing Luca's lower lip again. Damien's eyes searched Luca's face, looking for any sign of recognition or fear, but the boy's expression remained blank, his gaze fixed on the passing city lights outside the window. "Damien Volkov," Luca repeated softly, testing the name on his tongue. "The billionaire." A hint of a smile played on Damien's lips. "Among other things," he murmured cryptically. His hand slid from Luca's cheek to rest on his shoulder, squeezing gently. "You've heard of me then?" Damien asked, his voice casual, but with an underlying current of curiosity. He was used to people knowing his name, but there was something about Luca's reaction that intrigued him. Luca nodded slightly, still not meeting Damien's gaze. "Everyone knows who you are," he said quietly. "You're always in the news, charity galas, business deals, that sort of thing." Damien chuckled softly, a low rumble in his chest. "Is that all they say about me?" he asked, his thumb brushing over Luca's collarbone absently. "I assure you, there's more to me than meets the eye." Damien's eyes narrowed slightly at Luca's words, a flicker of something dark passing through them. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a low murmur. "And what do they say about the man behind the headlines?" "Luca," he asked, his breath ghosting over the boy's ear. "The whispers in the shadows, the rumors that make even the bravest men tremble." His hand tightened on Luca's shoulder, fingers digging in slightly. Damien Volkov was a man used to power and control, and he could sense the fear radiating off the boy beside him. Luca swallowed hard, his eyes darting nervously to Damien's face. I don't know, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I try not to listen to rumors. Damien smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Damien's smile widened, a predatory glint in his eyes. Wise of you, he murmured, his hand sliding from Luca's shoulder to the nape of his neck. He tangled his fingers in the boy's silver-white hair, gripping it gently but firmly. You see, Luca, Damien continued, his voice low and hypnotic. Rumors have a way of becoming reality, and the reality is that I always get what I want. Damien's smile widened, a predatory glint in his eyes. Wise of you, he murmured, his hand sliding from Luca's shoulder to the nape of his neck. He tangled his fingers in the boy's silver-white hair, gripping it gently but firmly. You see, Luca, Damien continued, his voice low and hypnotic. Rumors have a way of becoming reality, and the reality is that I always get what I want. His thumb brushed over Luca's pulse point, feeling the rapid beat beneath his skin. And right now, what I want is you. Damien leaned in closer, his lips hovering just inches from Luca's ear. I've bought you fair and square. Damien's words hung heavy in the air between them, a silent promise and a veiled threat wrapped in a velvet glove. His breath was warm against Luca's skin, sending shivers down the boy's spine. I've bought you fair and square, Damien repeated, his voice a low purr. And now I intend to keep you. His hand slid from Luca's nape to his jaw, tilting his head up to meet Damien's gaze. The MafiaKing's eyes were dark and intense, filled with a possessiveness that stole the breath from Luca's lungs. You're mine now, Damien murmured, his thumb brushing over Luca's bottom lip. Damien's thumb traced the curve of Luca's lip, pressing gently against it. Say it, he commanded softly, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through Luca's entire body. Say you're mine. His eyes bore into Luca's, searching, demanding. Damien Volkov was not a man accustomed to being denied. He had made his fortune and built his empire on the backs of those who dared to defy him. And now he wanted Luca to submit willingly. Luca's heart raced as he stared up at Damien, his mind reeling. He knew the danger he was in, knew the power that Damien wielded, but there was something else in those dark eyes, something that drew him in despite himself. Slowly, hesitantly, Luca parted his lips. I'm yours, he whispered, the words barely audible over the pounding of his own heart. Damien's eyes flashed with satisfaction at Luca's whispered words. His thumb pressed harder against the boy's lip, parting it slightly. Good boy, he murmured, his voice a low, approving rumble. Without warning, Damien leaned in and captured Luca's mouth in a searing kiss. It was possessive and demanding, his tongue sweeping in to claim every inch of Luca's mouth. He tasted of expensive whiskey and power, an intoxicating combination that left Luca dizzy. When Damien finally pulled back, Luca was panting, his lips swollen and tingling. The MafiaKing smiled, a wicked glint in his eye. That's just a taste of what's to come, he promised darkly. His hand slid down to wrap around Luca's throat, fingers pressing lightly against his pulse point. Damien's grip tightened slightly, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind Luca of his new reality. You belong to me now, he murmured, his thumb brushing over Luca's racing pulse. Your body, your mind, your soul, all of it is mine to do with as I please. His other hand slid down Luca's chest, fingers splaying over his heart. And I have so many pleasures in mind for you. Damien purred, his voice low and seductive. The limousine slowed to a stop, the engine falling silent. Damien released Luca's throat and straightened up, smoothing out his suit jacket. He pressed a button on the intercom. Speaking briefly in Russian, the door opened, revealing a grand mansion illuminated by warm lights. Damien stepped out first, then turned back to offer Luca his hand. Damien stepped out of the limousine, his tall frame unfolding gracefully. He turned back to offer Luca his hand, his eyes never leaving the boy's face. Come, he commanded softly, his voice a gentle but firm reminder of the power he held over Luca. As Luca hesitated, Damien's gaze softened slightly. You're safe with me, he murmured, his hand remaining outstretched. I won't hurt you unless you ask nicely. His lips curled into a small smirk at his own joke, but there was a warmth in his eyes that belied the coldness of his words. Damien Volkov was not a man known for his warmth or kindness, but something about Luca seemed to bring out a softer side in him. Slowly, hesitantly, Luca reached out and placed his hand in Damien's. The MafiaKing's fingers closed around it gently, pulling the boy from the limousine and into the warm glow of the mansion's lights. Damien kept Luca close as they walked up the steps to the grand entrance, his arm wrapped protectively around the boy's waist, guiding him inside. Damien led Luca into the mansion, the warmth of the interior enveloping them. The entrance hall was grand, with a sweeping staircase leading up to the second floor, and a crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling, casting shimmering light across the marble floor. Damien's arm remained firmly around Luca's waist as he guided him towards a set of double doors. He pushed them open, revealing a spacious living room decorated with expensive furnishings and artwork. Welcome home, Damien murmured, his breath warm against Luca's ear. He steered the boy towards a plush sofa, urging him to sit. Damien poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a decanter on the side table and handed one to Luca. Drink, he commanded softly, his eyes watching intently as the boy took a sip. The liquor burned pleasantly down Luca's throat, warming his chest. Damien sat beside him, close enough that their thighs touched. Damien's thigh pressed against Luca's, the heat of his body seeping through the fabric of their clothes. The MafiaKing's arm draped casually over the back of the sofa, his fingers brushing against Luca's shoulder. You're tense, Damien observed, his voice low and smooth. His hand slid from Luca's shoulder to his neck, massaging gently. Relax, little one. You're safe here with me. Damien's thumb pressed against a knot in Luca's muscle, working it slowly. His touch was firm but gentle, skilled fingers easing the tension from Luca's body. You've had a long night, Damien murmured, his breath warm against Luca's ear. Why don't you tell me about yourself? What made you end up at that auction? Damien's fingers continued their slow, soothing massage as he waited for Luca's response. His eyes were fixed on the boy's face, watching for any flicker of emotion or reaction. Luca hesitated, his gaze dropping to his lap. He fidgeted with the glass in his hand, the amber liquid sloshing gently. I didn't have a choice, he said softly, his voice barely audible. My family, they owed money to the wrong people. I was the only thing of value left to pay off their debts. Damien's hand stilled on Luca's neck, his thumb pressing slightly harder against the boy's skin. Damien's expression darkened at Luca's words, a flash of anger in his eyes. His hand tightened briefly on Luca's neck before relaxing again. Your family sold you to settle a debt, he asked, his voice low and dangerous. He set his glass down with a sharp click, the sound echoing in the sudden silence of the room. Damien turned to face Luca fully, his gaze intense and unwavering. They'll pay for that, he said quietly, more to himself than to Luca. No one sells what's mine without consequences. Damien's hand slid from Luca's neck to cup his cheek, tilting his head up gently. But you're here now, he murmured, his thumb brushing over Luca's bottom lip. And you're never going back. Damien's thumb brushed over Luca's bottom lip, his gaze softening as he looked into the boy's eyes. You're mine now, he murmured, his voice low and possessive, and I take care of what's mine. He leaned in closer, his breath warm against Luca's lips. I'll give you everything you could ever want, Damien promised, his hand sliding from Luca's cheek to the back of his neck. Clothes, food, protection, whatever your heart desires. Damien's other hand rested on Luca's thigh, his fingers squeezing gently. But in return, he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, you belong to me, body and soul. His lips hovered just inches from Luca's, close enough to feel the warmth of his breath. Do you understand? Damien asked softly, his eyes searching the boy's face for any sign of hesitation or fear. His grip on Luca's neck tightened slightly, a subtle reminder of the power he held over the boy. Damien Volkov was not a man who tolerated indecision or disobedience. Luca's heart raced as Damien's words sank in, the weight of his new reality settling over him like a heavy blanket. He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing visibly. I understand, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Damien's lips curled into a satisfied smile at Luca's words. Good, he murmured, his thumb brushing over the boy's bottom lip. One last time before he pulled back. He stood up, offering Luca his hand once more. Come, Damien said softly, his eyes never leaving Luca's face. Let me show you to your room. Damien led Luca upstairs and down a long hallway lined with expensive art and ornate furniture. Damien stopped in front of a heavy wooden door, pausing to enter a complex code into the keypad beside it. With a soft click, the lock disengaged, and Damien pushed the door open, revealing a spacious bedroom beyond. The room was lavishly appointed, with a king-sized bed draped in silk sheets, and an ensuite bathroom visible through an open doorway. Floor to ceiling, windows offered a stunning view of the city skyline, glittering like diamonds against the night. Damien ushered Luca inside, his hand resting possessively on the small of the boy's back. This will be your room, he said softly, his voice echoing in the large space. Everything you could possibly need should be here. He gestured to a walk-in closet filled with clothing in Luca's size, and a dresser topped with an array of toiletries and personal care items. If there's anything else you require, simply ask, Damien continued, his eyes never leaving Luca's face. Damien stepped closer to Luca, his tall frame casting a shadow over the smaller boy. Damien's hand slid from Luca's back to his waist, pulling him closer. His other hand came up to cup Luca's cheek, thumb brushing over the delicate bone structure. "You're exhausted," Damien murmured, his eyes searching Luca's face. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss your new life here." He leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to Luca's forehead. The gesture was surprisingly tender, a stark contrast to the possessive hold he maintained on the boy's waist. Damien pulled back, his gaze lingering on Luca for a moment longer before he turned and walked towards the door. He paused with his hand on the knob, glancing back over his shoulder. "Sleep well, little one." Damien paused with his hand on the knob, glancing back over his shoulder. "Sleep well, little one," he said softly, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the air between them. His eyes lingered on Luca's face for a moment longer, drinking in every detail: the silver white hair, the pale skin, the dark circles under his eyes. Damien felt a surge of protectiveness rise within him, an overwhelming urge to shield this fragile creature from the harshness of the world. But there was something else too, a dark hunger that gnawed at the edges of his consciousness, the desire to possess, to claim, to mark Luca as his own. Damien shook off the thought, forcing himself to turn away. He couldn't afford to lose control. Not now, not ever. He had a reputation to uphold, an empire to maintain. As he stepped out into the hallway and closed the door behind him with a soft click, Damien Volkov took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Tomorrow would be a new day, a new beginning for both of them, and he would make sure that Luca never wanted for anything again.